The great hall on Axiom Prime buzzed with quiet conversation. Representatives from 12 different alien species sat around the massive circular table. Their monthly meeting was almost over. Trade agreements had been discussed. Border disputes had been settled. The business of running a galactic confederation was nearly done for another month. Ambassador HFY of the Zilani stretched his long blue arms and yawned. His people were cat-like creatures with silver fur and sharp teeth. He looked around the table at the other ambassadors. The Githara delegates sat perfectly still, their rocky skin making them look like living statues. The insect-like Thrax clicked their mandibles softly as they reviewed their notes. "Before we close," HFY said, his voice carrying a playful tone, "I heard an interesting story from one of our outer colonies last week." Senior Counselor Threndok of the Githara looked up. His stone-like face showed no expression, but his glowing red eyes focused on HFY. "What kind of story, Ambassador?" HFY grinned, showing his sharp fangs. "The colonists on Helix 7 claim they found old ruins. Ancient ones. The writings there tell stories about a species called humans." Several ambassadors around the table started laughing. The Thrax made clicking sounds that was their version of laughter. Even the serious Githara seemed amused. "Not the human myths again," said Ambassador Kelprin of the aquatic Deepsworn. Her gills fluttered as she spoke through her water-filled helmet. "Those stories have been around for centuries." Dr. Yulanara, the chief historian of the Confederation, leaned forward. She was from the bird-like Skyreach species, and her colorful feathers rustled as she moved. "Ambassador HFY, surely you don't believe those old tales?" "I'm just sharing what I heard," HFY said with a shrug. "According to the ruins, these humans were bipedal creatures. They walked on two legs like the Githara, but they had soft skin instead of stone. The stories say they traveled between stars in great metal ships." "Metal ships?" Ambassador Kelprin's voice bubbled with amusement. "What primitive species would build ships from metal? The stress alone would tear them apart during faster-than-light travel." Threndek's stone fingers drummed on the table. "The human myths are interesting from a cultural perspective. Many primitive worlds have similar stories. They always describe the same impossible characteristics." "What characteristics?" asked Delegate Zixara from the energy-based Lumana race. Her voice came from a floating sphere of bright light. Dr. Yulanara pulled up a holographic display. Ancient text floated in the air above the table. "According to the myths, humans use kinetic weapons. Simple projectile throwers instead of proper energy weapons. They somehow survived in environments that should have killed them instantly. The stories claim they could fight for days without rest and heal from wounds that would be fatal to most species." "Sounds like fantasy to me," said Ambassador Morthic of the plant-like Verdani. His bark-like skin creaked as he shifted in his chair. "No species could survive the things these myths describe." "Exactly," Dr. Yulanara continued. "But here's the interesting part. The stories appear on worlds that have never had contact with each other. Worlds separated by thousands of light years. Yet the descriptions are remarkably consistent. How do you explain that?" HFY asked. "Simple," replied Dr. Yulanara. "The myths probably started from a real event. Perhaps an ancient spaceship crash. Primitive cultures would have created legends to explain the strange wreckage. Over time, the stories spread through early trade routes. Each telling made the creatures more fantastic and impossible." Ambassador Kelprin nodded, sending ripples through the water in her helmet. "That makes sense. Ancient peoples always turned real events into wild stories. The academic analysis is quite clear," added Threndok. "My people have studied these myths for 300 years. We found no evidence that humans ever existed. No artifacts, no ruins that can be verified, no genetic traces, nothing. Delegate Zixara's light pulsed thoughtfully. What about the consistency of the descriptions? That seems unusual for random myths. Not really, said Dr. Yelanara. Think about it from a practical standpoint. What would primitive cultures invent when trying to explain advanced technology? They would imagine creatures like themselves, but stronger and more capable. Walking on two legs is common among many species. Soft skin instead of scales, chitin or stone would seem exotic. Kinetic weapons are the simplest form of projectile technology that pre-spaceflight cultures understand. So you believe the myths describe an impossible species, said Vexai. Precisely. Dr. Yelanara replied. The supposed human characteristics violate basic biological principles. No species could be that adaptable. The stories claim humans could survive in acid rain, deadly radiation, extreme cold, and crushing pressure. They supposedly healed from wounds in days instead of weeks or months. Most ridiculous of all, the myths say humans could think and plan during combat stress that would paralyze any rational mind. Ambassador Morthic's branches rustled with amusement. My favorite human myth is the one about emotional bonds with other species. The stories claim humans could form friendships with completely alien creatures. Impossible, of course. Evolution doesn't work that way. The weapons myths are equally absurd, added Threndok. Kinetic projectiles couldn't penetrate modern energy shields. Yet the stories insist human weapons could somehow bypass the most advanced defenses. Dr. Yelanara expanded her holographic display. I've spent 15 years studying these myths for my doctoral research. Every detail becomes more impossible the closer you examine it. Humans supposedly had no natural weapons like claws or fangs, yet they became the galaxy's most effective warriors. They had relatively short lifespans, but somehow accumulated vast knowledge. They were physically weaker than most species, but could overpower much stronger opponents. It sounds like the universe's most elaborate fantasy, said Ambassador Keltron. That's exactly what it is. Dr. Yelanara concluded. The human myths represent every species. Dream of the perfect ally and every species' nightmare of the perfect enemy rolled into one impossible creature. It's fascinating psychology, but terrible science. The meeting began to wind down. As the ambassadors gathered their materials, Vexai shook his head with a smile. I suppose the colonists on Helix 7 will be disappointed. They seemed convinced they had found proof of human civilization. Let them enjoy their fantasy, said Threndok. As long as they remember, it's just a story. The Great Hall slowly emptied as the representatives returned to their ships. None of them noticed the faint energy signature that had been quietly monitoring their communications from the edge of the star system, far away in the darkness between stars. That signal was already traveling toward a small blue planet at the speed of light. The galaxy's most enduring myth had just learned exactly what the civilized worlds thought of them. And humanity was not pleased. Commander Zeteran stared at the sensor display with growing confusion. The readings made no sense. His long, scaled fingers danced across the control panel as he ran the scan again. The results came back identical. The Outer Perimeter Defense Station orbited a dead star at the edge of Confederation space. It was one of 50 similar stations that watched for threats from the unknown regions beyond civilized territory. In his 12 years manning this post, Zeteran had never seen anything like these readings. Station Commander called Operator Yixnel from across the sensor room. She was young for a serpentine, her green scales still bright and unscored by age. I'm getting the same anomalous signatures on Long Range Array 7. Zeteran slithered over to her station. His people moved like snakes, that they had evolved arms and hands for tool use. Show me, he hissed softly. The display showed space that should be empty. The region beyond their sensor range was supposed to contain nothing but a few barren star systems. No intelligent species lived there. The Confederation's deep space surveys had confirmed this repeatedly over the last 2 centuries, yet something was out there. Something big. The energy signatures are unlike anything in our database, Yxenol reported. The propulsion systems seem primitive, but they're moving massive objects at incredible speeds. How massive? Zeteran asked. The largest contacts are at least 1 kilometer long. Maybe bigger. It's hard to tell at this range. Zeteran's forked tongue flicked out nervously. Ships that large meant either military vessels or massive colony transports. Neither option was comforting when they appeared from supposedly empty space. How many contacts total? At least 800 distinct signatures. Commander, they're moving in perfect formation. Whatever they are, they're not random. 800 ships. Zeteran felt his blood run cold. That was larger than the entire Confederation Navy. What's their heading? Direct course for Confederation space. At current speed, they'll reach our border in approximately 6 months. Zeteran immediately opened a communication channel to Central Command. The transmission would take 3 days to reach headquarters and another 3 days for a response. But this couldn't wait. Priority Alpha message to Admiral Krenthal, he began recording. Unknown fleet of massive proportions detected at coordinates. He paused, checking the display again. The numbers still seemed impossible. 800 plus vessels, heading directly for our territory. Request immediate instructions. 3 days later, Admiral Krenthal received the message at Central Command, headquarters on Nexus Prime. The Cathara Admiral's stone face showed no emotion as he reviewed the sensor data. His glowing red eyes studied every detail. Analysis. He commanded. His aide, Captain Veltar of the insectoid Threx species, clicked his mandibles nervously. The readings are consistent across multiple sensor arrays, Admiral. Stations 47, 48, and 49 all report similar contacts. Possible explanations? Sensor malfunction seems unlikely, given multiple independent confirmations. The signatures could be asteroids caught in some kind of gravitational anomaly, but the perfect formation argues against natural phenomena. Admiral Krenthal was silent for a long moment. In his 300 years of life, he had seen many strange things in space, but this was genuinely puzzling. Could they be pirates using stolen technology? The scale seems too large for pirates, sir. 800 ships would require a population of millions to crew. No known pirate organization has those numbers. Then what are we looking at? Captain Veltar's compound eyes flickered. Unknown, sir. The Admiral made his decision. Send word to the border stations. Increase sensor sensitivity to maximum. I want constant monitoring of these contacts. And notify the Confederation Council. They need to be aware of this development. 2 weeks later, junior analyst Sectra was digging through old files in the Central Archives when she found something interesting. She was a young Lumina. Her energy formed glowing pale blue with concentration as she worked. The file was marked Classified. Theoretical Studies. Archived due to unscientific basis. Curious. She opened it. The document was titled Projected Technology Characteristics of Mythological Species, Human Subsection. It had been written 30 years ago by Dr. Rimthek, a scientist who had lost his research funding after the academic community rejected his work. Sectra. Read with growing amazement. Dr. Rim. Tak had taken the human myth seriously enough to extrapolate what their technology might look like if the creatures actually existed. He had calculated probable engine signatures, ship designs, and weapon characteristics. Based on the mythological descriptions, her light pulsed with excitement as she compared Dr. Rimthak's theoretical projections with the current sensor readings. From the border stations, they matched. Not perfectly, but close enough to be disturbing. The energy signatures, the ship sizes, even the formation patterns all fell within Dr. Rimthag's predicted parameters for human fleet movement. Sectra immediately copied the files and rushed to Captain Veltar's office. She found him reviewing the latest reports from the border stations. "Captain," she said breathlessly, her light flickering with nervousness, "I found something you need to see." Veltar looked up from his work. His mandibles clicked impatiently. "What is it, analyst?" She transmitted the files to his display. Old research about mythological human technology. The characteristics match our unknown contacts. The captain's compound eyes focused on the data. He read in silence for several minutes. When he looked up, his expression was unreadable. "This is theoretical speculation based on fantasy stories," he said finally. "Yes, sir. But the match is remarkable. Dr. Rimthag predicted engine signatures almost identical to what we're detecting." "Coincidence," Veltar replied firmly. "The human myths are fiction. This research was archived because it had no scientific basis." But Sectra noticed that he didn't delete the files. Instead, he marked them for Admiral Krentel's personal review. Meanwhile, on the border stations, the mysterious fleet continued its steady approach. The sensor operators watched with growing unease as the contacts maintained perfect formation across impossible distances. Whatever was out there, it was organized on a scale that dwarfed anything in recorded galactic history. Commander Zetran filed daily reports. The unknown ships never deviated from their course. They never responded to communication attempts. They simply continued their relentless advance toward Confederation space. "They'll reach our border in 4 months," Operator Yixnol reported during one of their regular briefings. "Any change in formation or speed?" Zetran asked. "None. They're as precise as clockwork." Zetran studied the sensor displays. 800 ships moving in perfect coordination across interstellar distances required a level of organization and technology that impressed even him. Whoever they were not primitive. "Commander," Ixnol said quietly, "what if they're not friendly?" It was a question that haunted every border station operator. The Confederation had enjoyed peace for over a century. Their military existed mainly for exploration and disaster relief. They were not prepared for a conflict on this scale. "Then we follow protocol," Zetran replied. "We observe, we report, and we prepare for first contact." But privately, he wondered if the Confederation's peaceful first contact protocols would be adequate for whatever was approaching from the dark between the stars. The precision of the unknown fleet suggested a military organization that took no chances and made no mistakes. In 3 months, they would find out what the galaxy's most enduring myth really looked like when it came home. Admiral Krentel stood on the bridge of his flagship, the battleship Harmony of Axioms. Around him, the finest vessels in the Confederation Navy maintained formation as they approached the edge of known space. This was the moment every officer dreamed of. First contact with a new species. The Confederation's first contact protocol was refined over centuries. Approach slowly, broadcast friendship messages in multiple languages, demonstrate peaceful intent, and begin careful diplomatic negotiations. It had worked flawlessly with every species they had ever encountered. "Admiral," reported Navigation Officer Pixtel, her bird-like head cocked in an angle. "Unknown fleet detected at maximum sensor range. Estimated 847 distinct vessels." Krentel nodded grimly. The numbers had grown during their journey to the intercept point. Whatever species they were about to meet, they clearly possessed impressive industrial capabilities. "Tactical assessment?" He asked. Commander Thexren, his weapons officer, studied the displays with his compound insect eyes. The largest vessels appear to be over 1 kilometer in length. Hull composition is unknown, but they're heavily armed. Energy readings suggest weapon systems unlike anything in our database. Communications? Broadcasting standard first contact messages on all frequencies, reported Lieutenant Silvara from her communication station. No response yet. The Confederation fleet slowed as they approached the unknown vessels. Through the main view screen, they could see points of light in the distance that gradually resolved into ships. Admiral Krenthal had seen many alien vessels in his long career, but these were different. The unknown ships were angular and aggressive-looking, built with obvious military purpose. They bristled with weapon emplacements and sensor arrays. Most unsettling of all, they moved with mechanical precision that spoke of advanced computer coordination. Range to contact? He asked. 50,000 kilometers in closing, Pixtel replied. Sir, Lieutenant Silvara called out urgently. I'm receiving a transmission on standard diplomatic frequencies. Perfect translation into Confederation standard. Krenthal felt his stone skin prickle. Perfect translations required either extremely advanced computers or years of study of their language. How could an unknown species have either? Put it through. The bridge speakers crackled to life with a clear, firm voice. This is Admiral Sarachan of the United Earth Systems Navy, commanding the Human Expeditionary Fleet. Request permission to approach for diplomatic talks. Silence fell across the bridge. Several officers turned to stare at Admiral Krenthal. The myths had come to life. Admiral, whispered Commander Thexren. She said human. Krenthal gathered himself quickly. Whatever these creatures were, they deserve proper diplomatic courtesy. He activated the communication system. Admiral Chun, this is Admiral Krenthal of the Confederation Navy. Welcome to our space. We are honored to make contact with your species. Thank you, Admiral. Though I should correct you, this is your first contact with us, but not our first knowledge of you. I don't understand. Admiral Chun's voice carried a slight amusement. 3 months ago, representatives of your confederation held a debate about whether my species exists. We received the transmission and found it quite illuminating. Horror washed over Krenthal. The council meeting on Axiom Prime had been transmitted on secure frequencies across multiple light years of space. If these humans had intercepted and decoded those communications, you monitored our internal transmissions? He asked carefully. We've been monitoring Confederation communications for over 200 years, Admiral. Your people have interesting conversations. Commander Thexren leaned close to Krenthal and whispered, Sir, if they've been watching us that long? Krenthal nodded grimly. These humans knew everything about Confederation technology, military capabilities, and political structure. Meanwhile, the Confederation knew nothing about them except ancient myths. Admiral Chun, Krenthal said, would you be willing to meet for formal diplomatic discussions? That's why we're here. I request permission to bring my flagship to Axiom Prime for meetings with your leadership. Granted. But I must ask, why now? If you've been observing us for centuries, why reveal yourselves at this moment? There was a pause before Admiral Chun answered. Because you're going to need our help, Admiral. Your sensors haven't detected them yet, but 3 separate hostile forces are heading toward Confederation space. The first will arrive in approximately 6 months. Hostile forces? The Devourers have returned from the Galactic Rim with upgraded technology. The hive mind of Sektoth has broken their isolation with conquest on their agenda. And something called the Void Touched is moving through dimensions your science doesn't recognize yet. Admiral Krenthal felt his ancient stone heart skip a beat. The Devourers were machine intelligence his thought destroyed 1,000 years ago. The hive mind was a nightmare from the early days of galactic civilization. As for the Void Touched, he had never heard of them. How do you know this? He asked. We've been preparing for this day for 2 centuries, Admiral. Earth's deep space monitoring networks detected these threats forming long ago. We came to offer assistance. You came to help us? The Confederation represents everything humanity values about galactic civilization, cooperation, peaceful trade, and scientific advancement. We won't let it fall to ancient evils. Commander Thexrin moved to Krentel's side again. Admiral, we should verify these claims. I understand your caution, Admiral Chun said, clearly having heard the whispered comment. I'm transmitting detailed sensor logs and threat analysis to your tactical officers. You'll find the data quite comprehensive. The bridge tactical displays immediately lit up with incoming data streams. Officers throughout the bridge began studying the information with growing alarm. Sir, called out Lieutenant Silvara, these readings, if they're accurate, the threats are real, Admiral Chun confirmed. Humanity spent the last 2 centuries building the fleet you see before you. We've prepared for this war while your people enjoyed peace. Admiral Krentel looked around his bridge at the faces of his officers. Fear and uncertainty showed clearly in their expressions. If these humans were telling the truth, the Confederation faced extinction. Admiral Chun, he said finally, I'm not authorized to make decisions of this magnitude. Would you be willing to address the full Confederation Council? Of course. I should warn you, though, some of your representatives are going to be quite surprised to learn they were wrong about humans being myths. Despite everything, Krentel almost smiled. I imagine they will be. Admiral, I'm also transmitting Earth's formal application for Confederation membership, along with our proposed contributions to mutual defense agreements. You'll find our technology specifications quite interesting. The data streams continued flowing to the Confederation ships. As tactical officers analyzed the information, expressions of disbelief spread across the bridge. Sir, Commander Thexran reported quietly, their weapons technology. It shouldn't work, but according to these specifications, it's remarkably effective. Their ship hulls are built from materials that don't appear in our databases, added Lieutenant Pixtel. But the strength calculations are impressive. Admiral Chun's voice came through the speakers again. Admiral Krentel, I know this is overwhelming. Your people thought we were stories. But legends exist for a reason. Sometimes they're warnings about what's coming. Sometimes they're promises of help when you need it most. Krentel looked out at the human fleet through his view screen. 800 ships filled with beings the galaxy had dismissed as fantasy. Beings who had been watching and preparing while the Confederation enjoyed peace. Admiral Chun, welcome to the galaxy, he said. I think we have much to discuss. Yes, we do, she replied. And I hope we have enough time to discuss it all before the shooting starts. The greatest myth in galactic history had just become the Confederation's only hope for survival. The Great Hall on Axiom Prime had never seen such chaos. Representatives from 12 species talked over each other in rising panic as Admiral Sarah Chun stood calmly at the center of the circular table. Her appearance had shocked everyone. The myths had described humans accurately. She was bipedal with soft skin, stood about 2 meters tall, and had brown hair and eyes that seemed to take in everything. This is impossible, Ambassador Vex High kept repeating. His blue fur was standing on end with agitation. We debated whether your species existed just 3 months ago. I heard that debate, Admiral Chun replied simply. Your discussion was quite thorough. Also quite wrong. Dr. Yelanara sat in stunned silence, her colorful feathers trembling. 2 centuries of academic work had just been proven completely incorrect. If humans were real, then every assumption about galactic history needed revision. You said you've been watching us for 200 years, Senior Counselor Threndok said, his stone face showing more emotion than usual. Why didn't you make contact sooner? Admiral Chun activated a holographic display that showed star charts of human space. Earth needed time to develop proper governing systems before joining galactic civilization. We learned early that advanced technology without mature social structures leads to disaster. The display showed dozens of star systems with human colonies, industrial platforms, and defensive installations. The scope was staggering. Humanity had built an entire civilization while remaining hidden from galactic observation. How is that possible? Asked Ambassador Keltrin, her gills fluttering with agitation inside her water helmet. Our long-range surveys should have detected your colonies. Human stealth technology evolved from necessity, Admiral Chun explained. When we first detected Confederation communications 2 centuries ago, we realized we weren't ready for contact. So we developed methods to remain unobserved while we studied your civilizations. She touched the control, and the display shifted to show comparative technology analyses. We learned your languages by monitoring your broadcasts. We studied your military capabilities by observing your exercises. We analyzed your political structures by following your diplomatic communications. You've been spying on us for centuries, Ambassador Morthic said accusingly, his bark-like skin creaking with indignation. We've been learning, Admiral Chun corrected. Earth's policy was to understand our neighbors before introducing ourselves. Given current circumstances, that caution probably saved both our civilizations. The display changed again, showing threat analysis data. 3 different alien armadas appeared on the star chart, each approaching Confederation space from different directions. These are the forces heading toward your territory, Admiral Chung continued. The Devourers from the Galactic Rim, the Hive Mind from the Sectoth systems, and the Void Touched from somewhere else. Dr. Yelinara finally found her voice. The Devourers were destroyed 1,000 years ago. The historical records are clear. The historical records were incomplete, Admiral Chun replied. The Devourers retreated to the Galactic Rim to rebuild. Our deep space monitoring stations have been tracking their expansion for 50 years. She gestured, and detailed images appeared of massive machine ships, unlike anything in Confederation databases. They've upgraded their technology significantly. Current Confederation defenses would be ineffective against their new capabilities. Ambassador Keltrin leaned forward. What about this hive mind? We have treaties with the Sectoth systems. You have treaties with the outer colonies. The core hive mind has been building its forces for conquest. They consider your treaties with the outer systems to be irrelevant. More images appeared, organic ships that look grown rather than built. Swarming in formations that hurt to look at directly. And the void touched? Asked Delegate Zixara, her light pulsing nervously. Admiral Chun paused. The void touched are harder to explain. They exist partially outside normal spacetime. Your physics models don't account for their capabilities. They're difficult to fight with conventional weapons. How do you know all this? Threnduk demanded. Because Earth has been preparing for this war for 2 centuries. We built our fleet specifically to defend against these threats. The display shifted to show human military capabilities. The assembled representatives stared in amazement at weapon systems that violated their understanding of physics. Your kinetic weapons, said Ambassador Vexhai slowly. The readings suggest they can penetrate energy shields. Correct. Human kinetic weapons use principles your science hasn't discovered yet. We learned early that energy shields have inherent vulnerabilities. Dr. Yelinara studied the technical specifications. These hull materials, they show damage resistance far beyond anything we've developed. Human engineering focuses on redundancy and adaptability. Our ships are built to keep fighting even when severely damaged. What about crew survival? Asked Ambassador Keltrin. The acceleration forces your ships can generate should be fatal to biological beings. Admiral Chun smiled slightly. Humans are more durable than your medical models predict. We've evolved on a high-gravity world with dangerous predators. What seems impossible to other species is merely difficult for us. The chamber fell silent as the representatives processed this information. Everything they thought they knew about galactic civilization was wrong. "Admiral Chun," Threnduk said finally, "you're asking us to trust our entire civilization to a species we thought was mythical until today. I'm asking you to accept Earth's application for Confederation membership and to coordinate our defensive efforts against multiple existential threats. What exactly are you offering?" Admiral Chun activated another display showing detailed alliance proposals. Full military cooperation, technology sharing agreements, and joint command structures. Earth's fleet will integrate with Confederation forces under unified command. "Under whose command?" asked Vexhai suspiciously. "That depends on who's best qualified to coordinate the defense." Earth's naval doctrine was developed specifically for this scenario. Our officers have trained for nothing else for 2 centuries. Ambassador Morthic's branches rustled with concern. "How do we know you're not the threat? How do we know this isn't an elaborate invasion plan?" Admiral Chun's expression grew serious. "Because if we wanted to conquer the Confederation, we would have done it decades ago. We've had complete intelligence on your capabilities for generations. We know the locations of every military base, every industrial facility, and every population center." The representatives exchanged alarmed glances. "But conquest was never our goal," she continued. "Earth believes in the Confederation's ideals. We want to preserve what you've built, not destroy it." Dr. Yelinara stood up slowly. "I need to completely revise 2 centuries of historical research. If humans are real, then every mythological species might be real." "Some are," Admiral Chun confirmed. "Others are definitely myths. Earth can provide updated information on which legends represent actual species and which are fantasy." "How many other species are hiding out there?" asked Delegate Zixara. "Fewer than you'd think. Most truly advanced species either join galactic civilization or destroy themselves. Earth chose isolation by necessity, not preference." Threnduk's glowing red eyes fixed on Admiral Chun. "What guarantees do we have that humanity won't become a threat after these other enemies are defeated?" "The same guarantees you have with any Confederation member: mutual cooperation and shared governance. Earth wants to be part of galactic civilization, not rule it." "And if we refuse your application?" Admiral Chun's expression didn't change, but something cold flickered in her eyes. "Then you face the coming threats alone. Earth will withdraw to defend our own territory." The chamber was quiet for a long moment. "How long do we have?" asked Ambassador Kelprin. "The Devourers will arrive first, in approximately 5 months. The other threats will follow within weeks of each other. We need to begin coordination immediately." Threnduk looked around the table at his fellow representatives. Fear and uncertainty showed clearly in every face. All in favor of emergency Confederation membership for Earth. He asked. Every hand, claw, tentacle, and appendage rose. "Welcome to the Confederation, Admiral Chun," Threnduk said formally. "Now tell us how to save our civilization." The warnings came exactly when Admiral Chun had predicted. Long-range sensors detected the first enemy fleet emerging from the galactic rim. The Devourers had returned. Their ships were massive geometric forms that absorbed light, making them look like holes cut in space itself. In the command center on Axiom Prime, Admiral Chun stood beside Admiral Krenthal as they coordinated the defense. Around them, officers from 12 different species worked frantically at control stations. The scope of the threat was worse than anyone had imagined. Devour fleet count confirmed at 1,500 vessels, reported Commander Thexren, his compound eyes reflecting the tactical displays. "They're moving in perfect mathematical formations." "What about the other threats?" Admiral Chun asked calmly. "Hive mind forces detected in the Sektoth region. called out Lieutenant Silvara. Estimated 1,200 organic ships. An admiral? She paused, looking confused. We're getting sensor ghosts throughout the outer rim. The readings don't make sense. Those aren't sensor ghosts, Admiral Chun said grimly. The Void Touched are testing our reality. They're here. Dr. Yelanara, now serving as intelligence coordinator, looked up from her analysis station. 3 simultaneous attacks on different fronts. Our combined forces can't cover everything. We don't need to cover everything, Admiral Chun replied. We need to break their coordination. Human doctrine focuses on striking enemy command structures. She activated the main tactical display. The galaxy appeared in 3 dimensions, showing friendly forces in blue, enemy forces in red, and the vast distances between battle zones. The Confederation fleet will engage the Devourers at the Nexus system, she explained. Human forces will handle the hive mind. The Void Touched require special tactics that only Earthships can execute. Admiral Krenthal studied the plan with his glowing red eyes. You're dividing our forces. Traditional tactics suggest we should concentrate our strength. Traditional tactics don't work against 3 fundamentally different enemy types, Admiral Chun replied. The Devourers use pure logic and overwhelming firepower. The hive mind operates on biological imperatives and swarm tactics. The Void Touched exist partially outside normal physics. How can your forces handle all 3 threats? Admiral Chun smiled coldly. Because humans train for impossible scenarios. It's what we do. The first battle began 3 days later at the Nexus system. The Confederation fleet, reinforced with human destroyers and cruisers, met the Devourer advance in the system's asteroid belt. Admiral Krenthal commanded from his flagship, while human advisors coordinated tactical support. The Devourers attacked with mathematical precision. Their ships moved in perfect geometric patterns, firing concentrated energy beams that could slice through traditional shields. Confederation vessels began taking heavy damage immediately. Our shields are ineffective, reported Commander Thexron. Their weapons are cutting through our defenses. Human vessels. Commence kinetic bombardment. Admiral Chun ordered over the communications network. The human ships opened fire with weapons that shouldn't have worked. Simple metal projectiles somehow punched through Devourer energy fields like they weren't there. Ancient machine ships that had survived 1,000 years of warfare began exploding under the impact of primitive bullets, traveling at significant fractions of light. Speed. Impossible, breathed Lieutenant Pixtel. Kinetic weapons can't penetrate quantum energy barriers. Human kinetic weapons can, Admiral Chun replied. We learned to exploit the interference patterns in energy shielding. Meanwhile, Admiral Rodriguez led the human fleet against the hive mind forces near Sektoth. The organic ships swarmed like angry insects, trying to overwhelm human vessels through sheer numbers. But humanity had fought swarm tactics before. Their ships moved in complex 3-dimensional formations that maximize firepower while minimizing target exposure. Human fighters, piloted by beings who somehow survived acceleration forces that should have killed them, carved through the organic swarms like surgical knives. Human pilots, Admiral Rodriguez reported to Admiral Chun, are engaging at acceleration levels that exceed biological tolerance for every known species except humans. Acknowledged. Continue engagement. The most disturbing battle occurred in deep space where the Void Touched emerged from dimensions the Confederation science insisted didn't exist. Their ships appeared and disappeared randomly, phasing in and out of normal space-time. Admiral Chun took personal command of the human Dreadnought UES Indomitable for this engagement. Her crew worked at their stations with calm efficiency as reality warped around them. Void-touched vessels are manifesting in 7 different dimensional phases, reported her science officer. They're attacking from directions that don't exist in three-dimensional space. Human crews, activate quantum stabilizers, Admiral Chun ordered. Lock onto their probability matrices. Admiral, called her tactical officer. They're targeting our command ship specifically. Multiple phase contacts converging on our position. All ships maintain formation. Prepare for dimensional assault. The void touched materialized around the human fleet like nightmares given form. Their ships were twisted geometries that hurt to look at directly. They fired weapons that ignored armor and shields by attacking from alternative timelines, but humans have prepared for this too. Their ships carried experimental technology based on theoretical physics that most species dismissed as impossible. As the void touched attacked, human vessels shifted into quantum superposition, existing in multiple probable states simultaneously. Direct hit from phase weapon, the tactical officer reported calmly. Hull breach in 17 different probability states. Damage control teams are sealing breaches across all probability matrices. Return fire, Admiral Chun ordered. Human weapons fired into multiple dimensions at once, striking void-touched vessels in the spaces between spaces. Ancient entities that existed, partially outside reality, found themselves trapped in quantum cages and systematically destroyed by weapons that attacked their fundamental probability of existence. Back in the command center, Dr. Yil_Nara watched the battle reports with amazement. How are they doing this? Human crews should be dead from the stress alone. Humans evolved on a world that tried to kill them constantly, Admiral Chun explained. High gravity, dangerous predators, extreme weather, geological instability. What seems impossible to other species is just another day for humanity. The climax came when the three enemy forces attempted to coordinate their attacks. The Devourer command ship began, transmitting coordination signals to the hive mind, while the void touched open dimensional gates to bypass human defenses. All enemy forces are linking their command structures, reported Lieutenant Silvara. They're attempting a synchronized assault on Earth itself. Admiral Chun's expression hardened. Not acceptable. All human forces, execute Omega Protocol. Admiral Krenthal said urgently, what is Omega Protocol? Something we hoped we'd never have to use. The U's indomitable, severely damaged and surrounded by void-touched vessels, began powering up systems that physics said were impossible. The massive human dreadnought prepared to make a jump through a gravity well while under heavy fire. Admiral, her navigation officer reported, jump calculations complete. Warning, probability of survival is less than 12%. Execute jump. Admiral Chun ordered. The Indomitable disappeared from normal space and reappeared directly behind the Devourer command vessel. At point-blank range, the human ship fired a single kinetic projectile that tore through the ancient machine's quantum processing core. The Devourer command network collapsed instantly. Without coordination, the geometric formations broke down into chaos. Confederation and human forces pressed their advantage, systematically destroying the confused machine ships. With the Devourers defeated, combined forces turned to help Admiral Rodriguez finish the hive mind forces. The organic swarms, cut off from Devourer support, found themselves outmaneuvered by human tactical doctrine that treated space combat as a three-dimensional chess game. The void touched, trapped between dimensions by human quantum weapons, retreated to whatever impossible realm they came from. In less than a week, 3 existential threats to galactic civilization had been eliminated. Admiral Chun stood in the Great Hall on Axiom Prime, addressing the Confederation Council. Her uniform was torn and scorched from the battle, but she stood straight and proud. The immediate threats have been neutralized, she reported. Earth's deep space monitoring networks will continue watching for future dangers. Ambassador Vex High, His blue fur, still ruffled from stress, shook his head in amazement. The myths were true. All of them. Humans really can survive impossible odds. Not impossible, Admiral Chun corrected. Just highly improbable. There's a difference. Dr. Yelinara stood up slowly. I'm beginning a new research project. If humans are real, then every legend in galactic folklore needs to be reconsidered. What other myths might actually be advanced species waiting to reveal themselves? Some are real, Admiral Chun confirmed. Others are definitely fantasy. Earth will share our knowledge of which species are genuine and which are stories. Thran_Doc's stone face showed something that might have been a smile. Welcome to the Confederation, humanity.